The Walter Bosley Channel podcasts featuring Walter Bosley Reads Books, the Transtemporal Cosmic Universe podcast, California, and our new Launchpad Roswell podcast. Every second and fourth Tuesdays, I offer a live reading from one of my books. My current title is Destination Carcosa. Be sure to sign up for Walter Bosley Reads Books. The Launchpad Roswell podcast features episodes sharing new insights and the latest discussion on my book, Shimmering Light, in which I investigate my dad's curious and strange experience in the United States Air Force. The Transtemporal Cosmic Universe podcast is already loaded with several episodes featuring Joseph Farrell, Lynn Buchanan, Joshua Cutchin, and other perspectives on phenomena crossing time and space. The California podcast features Todd Wood presenting his Down the Rabbit Hole research into the astonishing connections and synchronicities between serial killer cases in the Golden State and across the nation. There's something for everyone at the Walter Bosley Channel podcasts. Subscribe at walterbosley.com/podcasts.
Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. Here at Forbidden Knowledge News, I've always taken an unbiased, open-minded, and responsible approach to presenting my own theories, and the views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. Conspiracies are definitely fun to discuss in a responsible way. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Hello, friends. Real quick, before we start the show, we had so much content for our upcoming film, the Forbidden documentary Doors of Perception, that we will now be splitting it into two 90-minute films. We're finishing up with part 1 right now and should have it submitted to our distributor by January. We will also be starting production for film 2 within a few weeks. We're having a fundraiser for travel and equipment expenses. We'll be traveling to South Carolina and Georgia to start filming very soon. If you'd like to make a donation for our film fundraiser, please use the link right in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated, and we're very excited about this film. Enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Karen Holton. Be sure to check out the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That's available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. You can get a Rokfin premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN+. Always be sure to download our podcast. If you listen through any audio podcast provider, download that episode through Spreaker. We are booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Karen Holton. She is an experiencer, holistic coach, author, and host of the Quantum Guide Show and Aliens and Angels podcasts. Karen, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. It is great to have you back. Very excited. You have a new book coming out soon, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. We're going to be discussing that a bit today. You also have offered some incredible orgone generators and pyramids, which I have a few of myself all over my house, above me, and I absolutely love them. Thank you so much for those. And it's been a little while since you've been on. Before we get into the discussion, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know where they can find all your content.
Chris. And basically, I have a YouTube channel. Actually, I have several channels: Rumble, Odyssey, Telegram, at Karen Holton TV. But I'm also a proud member of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. And Chris streams out all of my material, all of my content onto all the audio platforms, and that's under the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton. And I go live every Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, which is noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. And then I also have a second podcast called Aliens and Angels, and that is a live show that comes out every Sunday afternoon at 11 Pacific, noon Mountain, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's really interesting because I interview and discuss the, exopolitical issues with other people who have had contact.
Excellent. Thank you for that introduction, Karen. What brought you to write this upcoming book? I know you've been working on it for a while, and I imagine it's based on many of your own personal experiences, right?
Yeah, the whole thing is nonfiction. The whole thing is my actual experiences. And what led me to write the book was, interestingly, not only my guides that told me to come out and share my history with the world. That was in 2017. I had no idea how the heck was I going to do this. I mean, there's just little old me. I'm not famous. I don't have any special anything. I was new to social media. I didn't have channel yet. I didn't know you, Chris, or anybody. And through time, I got to know you, and you included me in the 2020 Forbidden Knowledge News Con. And that's where I presented some of my information initially. And then that's also where I met Preston Dennett, because you arranged for us to do a round table together. And Preston was really interested in my experience being a writer about nonfiction and science fiction writer. He's published over 30 books. He really knows his material. He's been a MUFON investigator for some time. And he said to me, Karen, why don't you send me, if you want to, send me a copy of your presentation? And would it be okay if I shared it with my friend Dolly? Well, I sent it to him. Turns out Dolly is Dolly Safran. Preston's written about her lifetime experiences in a book called Symmetry. And he encouraged me to write the book. So if it wasn't for you, Chris, I wouldn't have met Preston. If I didn't meet Preston, I never would have started on the book. Now, it's a lot harder to write a book than what I thought. I mean, it would be one thing if I just put down, dates and occurrences, but I wanted it to be a decent read. I wanted it to be enjoyable. And I basically wanted to make it so that I take the reader with me so they get to experience what I experienced. And it's now, the manuscript is finished, and Preston actually has a copy, and Dolly Safran has a copy, and they're now looking it over, seeing if there's any last minute edits that might be required, and then they're going to write me a review that I can include in the published version. So it's in its final stages. I'm hoping it's going to be out on Amazon before Christmas. And what I want to say about it is it's divided up into 3 parts. The first part goes into clarifying how my experience is not necessarily like other people's experiences. And it goes into my paranormal background and other things that happened to me, including childhood trauma that I believe made it possible for me to have transdimensional contact. Part 2 is all about my experiences with the extraterrestrials aboard the big ship. There's a time dilation. So, although I was actually only away during the night for 3 months consecutively, every night for 3 months, my experiences span more like 3.5 years worth of adventures. And then the third part is the political ramifications, how other people can make contact. And when I speak of contact, sorry for rambling on, but when I speak of contact, I'm not talking about a spaceship showing up over my house, putting down a blue beam that lifts me through the ceiling up onto the spaceship and takes me away. I never had anything like that happen that I know of. And I only wrote about what I actually have memories of. I didn't try to fill in. And so that's why it's called transdimensional, because my experiences are transdimensional. And I get into that in the book, the various ways that we can travel there and have these transdimensional experiences, how to listen for transdimensional, interdimensional messages. And so that's how it happened for me. So basically, I would go to bed at night in my pajamas, go to sleep, and boom, I'd be aboard the big ship having all these adventures. And I could be away for days, weeks, even months. And then I would just suddenly and abruptly wake up. I'd be back in my own bed in my pajamas. I'd look at my clock, and I'd look at my phone to see what the date was. And here I was, only one night had passed by. And this happened every single night for 3 months. And then it abruptly stopped. And, but I had so many adventures. And of course, I've written about everything in my book.
You mentioned that your experiences, you believe, are much different than many others' experiences. I've heard many of your encounters, and although they may be different in a sense that you're not physically being taken as others believe they are, but they are very similar, because I have spoken with so many contactees and experiencers. They are very similar to many experiences, although it may be different atmosphere, different beings. Everyone seems to interact with different types of intelligences, and we'll get into that later, a little bit of our theories behind of everything that is happening with contact experiences. But maybe you could walk us through a couple of experiences just to give us an idea of what happened.
Sure. So it started off with what I call orientation, where I just was in this huge room with a bunch of other, what I thought at the time were
now,
people,
Karen,
but I suspected.
Before we get into the actual experience, did it happen while you were sleeping? You would fall asleep and then you would wake up in the experience?
Yes. So what I'm really honest in the book that I don't know exactly how it happened. So I could be lucid dreaming. I could be, where you go to sleep, you're having a dream and you wake up in the dream. It could be astral projection. It could be remote viewing. I think all of those phenomena all of those experiences are part of the same phenomena. But the thing that makes it a little different is that I had physicality, and I couldn't figure out how I could be in my bed and I could be aboard the big ship. And I realized through time that there was three different ways that I could be there physically. Actually four. I could be, without my knowledge, be picked up and transported there. That's possible, although I don't remember it, and I'm not going to make up stuff because my experience is fantastical enough as it is without having to make up stuff. If I was making up stuff, the story would be a lot longer. Let's put it that way. So then another way is there is a non-local bilocation that is possible. And I believe we live in a simulation, which is like holographic universe. When you look at it through that lens, it all makes sense. Whereas if you're just limited in your thinking to three-dimensional globe Earth thinking, it doesn't make much sense. So I think in the beginning, I was taken by non-local physical by location because there was an orientation process that I'll talk about again in a minute. Then another option is what I call the generic clone, where that is where our consciousness is transported and we're actually put in what I call the generic clone. And I don't know if the clone, or I call it also one size fits all. Now, I don't know if the clone body is synthetic, biological, an actual clone. Like, I have no idea how it's made. But in it, I had the ability for physicality. And I only did that a couple of times because psychologically, I found it very difficult to not look like me. And all the clone bodies look the same. So different beings come from different dimensional realities, different places within what we would call the time-space continuum, and they all look the same when they occupy a clone body. And the clone bodies, you can tell the beings apart because they walk differently, they have different mannerisms, their posture's different, but basically they have the same physical body. And then there's the identical clone body where I'm transported, I'm sleeping in my bed, but I'm transported my consciousness into an exact copy of me, except it's way better. And that is got its pluses and minuses because when I'm aboard the big ship, I feel great. I can function, I can learn, I can do things. But when I wake up in the morning after being healthy, truly whole and healthy for days, weeks, or months, and then to wake up the next morning with my crippled toes and my aches and pains and my wrinkly old face, it's really hard to come back to the way I am physically in the here and now. So that is how I figure. And one time though, at least one time that I recall, and that is another thing, Chris. I don't have all my memories, but I have enough to convey what the experience is like. And one time I actually did a consciousness transfer with another being who was aboard the big ship, and it was really interesting. It only happened a few times. And the one time, though, there was somebody I knew who was trying to get a hold of me, and they kept phoning me and knocking on my door, and they were really worried about me because they thought that, I had been sick or something bad had happened to me or I'd had a fall. And after I got back, this person was, got a hold of me and was really concerned. And I couldn't tell them, oh, it's aboard a big spaceship in a folded interdimensional envelope in outer space, and I had traded bodies with another being, and they didn't want to answer the door or the phone. I can't say that. So I just said, oh, I'm real sorry about that. I was kind of depressed for a few days, but I'm okay now.
When we first started this interview, you mentioned that you believed a lot of this may have been triggered through trauma, in a sense that trauma may have activated your awareness to be able to sense things that maybe others can't. And I think this is a huge aspect when it comes to a lot of experiencers, is childhood traumatic experiences. And we'll get into that a little bit later too, because I have some connections I'd like to bring up and compare. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the experiences or what may have led to your awareness expansion?
It started off when I was 6 weeks old. I got very sick. I was diagnosed with both polio and meningitis. The doctor came to the house. They used to do that in those days. Took one look at me, bundled me up, and took me directly to the hospital. And I was deprived of contact with my mom, my family, everybody, and put in isolation for 6 weeks. Now, normally a baby that young, I'm sorry, it was for 6 weeks. I was 3 months old. Sorry, I got that wrong. And normally babies don't survive if they don't have loving contact. And when you break the bond between the mother and the baby, the attachment bond, the child grows up wonky, for lack of a better term. Later on, when I was 4 years old and my younger brother was 2, we were sent to a foster home, and we were severely abused, starved, beaten, tortured, and locked in a dark room in the basement for 6 months. And then my mom got us back. And that we had nowhere to go. We couldn't escape. And so I had to escape through my mind. So my imagination, which I believe is actually a technology, it's actually a portal, that's where it really started to develop. Then, not long after my mom came back and got us, by the time I was 5 years old or even before, my mom married my stepdad, and he was super cruel. And since flight or fight was not an option for me, I couldn't get away, and I certainly couldn't talk back without getting more brutality. I developed what they called a freeze response. And in the freeze response, then I was also punished because it was taken as non-compliance. But through that, I think I learned to further develop dissociation. So I think if we could overcome our childhood traumas or even our grown-up traumas and get to the point where we're no longer playing the victim role, blaming our parents, blaming, the victimizer, when we can step out of all of that and we've done our personal work and our shadow work, like, yes, this stuff is horrible and it never should happen. But since it did, then it opens us up for these amazing, what I'm going to call interdimensional experiences. When you think about it, Chris, the human body, we can only register a very narrow band of the light frequency spectrum and the color spectrum. We can only hear a very narrow band of sounds. Our sensation to the electromagnetics of things that we perceive as touching, very limited. There's room for all kinds of other beings in our reality that we might not even be aware of. And I believe that depending on our heart, which also spells out to our resonant frequency of who we are, our essence, those influences, invisible influences, are benevolent and can take us to all kinds of amazing places. So it's really not the trauma that does it, but what we do with it. And it takes courage and it takes years of work. And to be honest with you, I have never found any relief through the psychiatric or mental health systems on this planet. As far as I'm concerned, they were holding me back. And I spent years on medications, and it wasn't until I got off everything. And I'm not making a medical claim here, and I'm not making medical suggestions. I'm just speaking from my own experience that made a huge difference, getting off everything and pursuing my own route and road to sanity.
Most of your contact experiences, especially the more recent ones, have been, for the most part, positive. Did you have any experiences that may be considered negative intelligences? And also, after your traumatic experience in childhood, did you have any paranormal experiences growing up? Any other types of encounters?
Yeah. Okay. So if I forget part of your question, pose it to me. So basically, now I've forgotten the first part, so I'll answer the last part first. Yes, I had a lot of paranormal experiences. Everything from, how some children can read books while they're blindfolded and can't see the print. So I had some experiences where I have had an older brother, and he one time he locked me in the closet and I couldn't get out. I wasn't scared, but I wanted to get out. I was bored. And I wanted to see what he and my younger brother were doing. And suddenly I could see everything outside of the room even from what they were doing and beyond what was going on in the household. And of course, when I told my older brother, he just laughed at me and said I was making it up and I was stupid. And, my family had a zero tolerance for any paranormal talk. They just kept telling me that I had an overactive imagination. I should stop talking like that. People were going to think we were crazy. What would the neighbors think? That kind of thing. Can you remember
Yes.
your first part of your question?
It was about any recent negative experiences with these interdimensional beings.
Yes, I've had a couple. So, in my book, I get into my angelic encounter. I think I've spoken about that on your show before. And I was in a very low state of grieving. So, I would consider myself in a very low vibrational state. And my kids had gone to live with their dad. He wanted his turn raising them. I didn't feel it was right for me to keep them from that experience. Once they went, he denied me contact, and I was heartbroken. I moved into a small house. Unbeknownst to me, the fellow who lived there before me had committed suicide in a very specific way while he lived in that house. So he was the tenant that lived there before me. I know this is true because a couple of years later, I met a woman and she asked me where I lived. And when I told her, she says, "Oh my God, do you have any idea what happened in that house?" And then I found out I wasn't imagining it. So while I was in this very deep, low state of grieving, I kept having the compulsion to kill myself in a very specific way. And that led to my angelic encounter. So that is a negative experience. Another negative experience, which I've spoken to you about on your show, and that happened even in the last year, while being asleep and lucid dreaming. So I was in an awakened state while I was sleeping. I had an entity communicate with me that wanted to take control over me, but it needed my permission. It spoke in kind of riddled language. It didn't say, "Oh, I want to take over your body." He said it was a male, at least it came across as male entity. And he said he wanted to cup me, CUP, cup me. And I didn't know what he meant. So at first I thought maybe he was a pervert or something, right? And I said, "What exactly would that look like?" And he just dodged around it and dodged around it. And finally, he got tired of not giving him permission, and he left. So really, those are about, at least what I can think of, those are about the only real negative experiences I've had. And I think it's because I keep myself on a very high vibrational level through dealing with my shadow self, being in contact with my spiritual guides. I'm surrounded by orgone generators and crystals. And I think that is why. I believe that you have to be on the same plane of reality in order to engage. And so the plane that I spend most of my time on, not saying I'm better, just saying through trial and error, I've somehow made it to this point where, okay, there is one other thing, childhood experience. When after my mom married my stepdad and there was much cruelty, he was a very cruel man. We had a lot of harsh physical punishment. And I was very afraid of the dark and very afraid to go to sleep at night. But I knew that there was other realms, but I didn't have language for it or a conceptual framework. I was just a child. And I actually had a positive experience happen where I had a phoenix appear to me in vision. I don't believe it was a physical being that showed up in my bedroom, but definitely I could see it. And it was made of fire. And it told me that it would protect me. Anytime I was frightened to call upon it, and it would be there, and it worked. I've got a picture of it in my upcoming book and more details about that experience. So that's about it, Chris. I've been very, very fortunate.
Well, this brings up a theory that I've been rolling around. It's a consideration right now. It's a heavy consideration, although it could change with new information. But first, it seems like people's experiences, based on the many experiences that I've been told about, are based on their perception at the time of the experience. If they're in a negative state of mind, a bad situation, they're surrounded by negativity, they tend to have very disturbing experiences with paranormal or extraterrestrials, which seems to be more and more connected as all of the same experience in some ways. I'm not saying there aren't people who are physically being taken, but the more evidence that comes out is pointing to that this is a consciousness phenomena of some sort. Based on my own experiences through meditation and psychedelics, I would be able to access seemingly these other realms that would have ecosystems of life forms, and it would be visionary based. I would be laying in my bed and I would be very aware of that, but I would also have my eyes closed and be able to see these profound worlds around me and become aware of intelligences and beings that were communicating with me. It was such an immersive experience, and it can become so real. I have to think, and especially based on the films that I'm making right now and all the guests that have been interviewed for this film and all the research I've done particularly for this, near-death experiences, meditation, astral projection, like you were saying, remote viewing, these all seem to be accessing similar areas of our consciousness, and it leads me to believe that we shouldn't be searching for these life forms in outer space or beyond our atmosphere, that we seem to have access to the entire universe just by going within ourselves. And vice versa. Whatever these intelligences are have easy access to us because they seem to be within our consciousness, which I believe is also non-local. I think that we're just a receiver for it. That's what our brain is basically doing. It's an antenna that receives this transmission of consciousness, but we can not only access our personal transmissions, we're connected to everything, so we can experience everything in this super spectrum universe that probably exists in our own consciousness. What do you think about that?
I think you're right on the money, Chris. Absolutely right on the money. Case in point, the big ship where I go or where I went, um, people say, well, where is it? Is it in Alpha Centauri? Is it here? Is it in the Pleiades? Is it in Sirius system? Is it in our solar system? And I say, no, none of those things. It's actually not there. It's here. It's in think of a Venn diagram with 100 different ovals that all overlap at one specific spot. And each oval in the Venn diagram represents a different place, a different dimensional reality, a different universe, as though, like, as we could be living in a multiverse, a different realm. But there's one spot where it all overlaps, and that's where the big ship is located. It's in an interdimensional fold, and it's not there. It's here. It's not far away, and that way, many different kinds of beings can come to the big ship for training and experiences, and it really, really makes sense. The other thing is when we moved the big ship to a new location. We didn't travel from point A to point B. Point A became point B. And what the big ship used for this interdimensional shift was actually the collective consciousnesses or imaginations of all of us that were on the big ship. So it would emit tones, we would go into a trance state, it would use our imagination to fold space as we think of it to take us into a new location. Very interesting. And I've been taught, and I believe that our imagination is a technology, it's a portal. And it actually, we can use it to fold time and space, but we have to be willing to step outside of mainstream thinking to
That's
do.
interesting. I was just talking with somebody the other day, and I said I believe that our imagination and perception is the fuel that creates our reality. Everything we're projecting, everything we are observing is based on our perception of things, but I believe that our creativity and our imagination also contributes in a huge way to our immediate reality and the collective.
Mm-hmm. And what's really exciting about this is all the so-called, well, I guess people on this planet that are psychopaths who lack empathy and compassion. And that includes a lot of the so-called ruling class, or what I call the parasite class. They don't have the creative ability. They're missing more than just their empathy and compassion. It is those of us who have compassion and have empathy. We're capable of it. We exercise it. We use it. We also have the creativity. We also have this incredible spiritual quality, not religious, but spiritual quality of being able to use our imagination to go to places that we didn't know we could do. And so it's part of the mainstream reality, or what I call the construct, which is not the real life, but one that we've been born into, and it's all we know until we step outside of it, to label all of this as fiction. But the truth is, nonfiction, as it's sold to us through mainstream society, is not real. And a lot, if not most, of what we call nonfiction is actually true. It's an inversion. And I'm sure you've done lots of shows about how everything in the system is an inversion.
Yeah, 100%. Now, before we move out of the realms of how trauma can trigger these experiences and some of the dark side of this, I think that most of the dark side, like I said earlier, is based on our immediate perception, but it also can be manufactured. I think there are a lot of dark factions that throughout our modern history that have been manipulating the UFO narrative in such extreme ways they are harming individuals in the process. What I mean by that is I think they have such extreme operations where they used to actually stage abductions. I'm not sure if they're still doing this. Yeah. They may still be, who knows, but I've been talking a lot about the MK Ultra program and what people are talking about in our modern times as the quote-unquote secret space program. I think there's some very dark implications behind this, and I would never discount any of these people's experiences, but I have a outside perspective based on everything I've heard and my observations about these experiences. Most of these people have had traumatic experiences from a young age, and some of them have been born into military families, or they have very close family members that are high-level military, or some other powerful interest. And a lot of these people are being used, being experimented on in terrible ways. And not only that, they're being used to promote a UFO narrative in certain ways because they are being given traumatic experiences, up to being kidnapped. Like I said, I'm not sure if this is going on anymore, but based on a lot of the older experiences, I believe that there were black operations to actually kidnap people and get them to believe that they've been taken by non-human intelligences to propel a narrative that UFOs are a threat and everything we're seeing coming out of our news right now. But also, there are these experiencers that claim to have similar experiences to you, only very dark and negative, where they're being forced to fight aliens in different planets, on different realms, and having these amazing adventures, but often they are being sent on what seems like missions in these other dimensions. There's a few things that could be happening here. I believe that there is some truth in their experiences in a sense to where they may be triggering out-of-body experiences for these people, and they are having these quote-unquote experiences and adventures, but it's not physical. They are being forced through trauma and probably drugs and whatever other tactics they're using to force an out-of-body experience and then control that experience somehow. Who knows, through technology, who knows what kind of technology they're using now, but I believe that they have the ability to do this remotely for people. And a lot of people who are in the UFO community that have had negative experiences are possibly targets for this type of operation. And I think it may be more widespread than we think. We have basically open access to whoever wants to hack into our devices that has the ability to do so. And it's almost like we welcome it collectively because we don't even think about these possibilities. But I think that there's a larger infiltration that's been happening for a long time, and it is leading and perpetuating a UFO narrative that could manifest very dangerously in our future.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, a couple things I want to mention. First of all, I would never disagree with anyone's experience, just as I wouldn't want anyone to say that my experience isn't real. I would never do that. So it's a subjective thing. Second of all, I want to say that in my opinion, I guess I should say in my opinion, there have been physical abductions with beings that appear to be like what we would call the Greys. I call them the stereotypical Greys, but there's military presence. And I truly believe that they stage these and in order to put fear into people. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie called The Village, where these people live in a little village and someone dresses up in a monster costume, scare the hell out of them to keep them within the village because they don't want them to know about the world on the outside that's going on. And people outside don't know about the village, and people in the village don't know about the outside. I think it's a great metaphor for what's going on with interdimensional, transdimensional, and ET experiences. The second thing I want to say is you can find the patents, you can go to government websites and find tons of information about how they're able to control human beings via the atmosphere, via the electronic systems, the Wi-Fi systems, the cell phone systems. So I think there's that going on. And I think it's done under experiments. But a lot of these experiments, you would think, yeah, but they would get their data and then they would stop. No, there's so many examples of horrible, horrible things done to other humans. In the United States, there's tons of evidence. They gave a whole 40 years of a population of Black people in the States, gave them syphilis and then didn't treat it, lied to them about what they had so they could watch the effects for 40 years. And it wasn't until it came out public, that through public outrage, that was noticed. So this could be going on for 70 years. It could still be going on. Wouldn't surprise me at all. So the other thing I want to say is not just through chemtrails, but I also believe through pharmaceuticals, we're all being polluted with nanotechnologies and things that attract these signals and make them, amplify them, and make them work on our minds and our bodies. So if you take all of that and you combine it with trauma that opens up where sometimes we don't know exactly what's real, that's what leaves us open to positive and negative transdimensional experiences, right? You have all that going on. You add MK Ultra into the mix, which is a real thing. It's not like somebody made that up. You can find out that, fairly accurately, that's a real thing. You take all of that, not to mention our programming, and then you throw in fifth generational warfare that's going on, where they're pumping us full of fear and then planting ideas into our minds, because that is how brainwashing works, you take that huge mess, Chris. And I would say, of course, these people are having these experiences. Absolutely. And that's why I think it's happening.
Right.
It's a lot.
Based on my experiences with other intelligences, mostly with what I understand as my higher self, there also seem to have been other beings that I had encountered along the way. But based on these positive experiences that I had, it seems like, in a sense, these beings are there for us. They are there particularly to guide us on our path and help us out. My experiences were about healing and doing what I really was passionate about and connecting to my soul mission. And through my experiences, I was able to remember all of this and connect to that. Unless you're being targeted or having a very bad time in life, usually these experiences will lead you on a very beautiful path. What were some of the most profound messages for you?
I think one was, at one point, I wanted to know my life purpose, because there has to be more than being born, getting sick, hating school, not getting along with my parents, societal ostracism, shitty dead end jobs, failed marriages, realizing what an inadequate parent I was, and trying to raise kids as a single mom, and on and on and on. And this is not unique to me. This is going on for so many people. I knew that there had to be another reason for me to be here, and I wanted to know my life purpose. And so I put it out to my guides, and the answer I got back was very simple and very profound. My reason for being here was to learn how to love and how to allow myself to be loved in return. That was the sort of blanket objective of my life. And it made me really happy. It really unburdened me, because then I realized I can do this. I could do this. But then I had to learn, what does it mean to love? How can I love and accept love if I don't know what it is? And I realized love is like a basket. It's not anything to do with erotic sexual behavior. And it's got nothing to do with codependence. Okay. So what love is it's a combination of attributes all exercised at the same time. So it includes patience. It includes mildness. It includes kindness. It includes empathy. It includes compassion. It includes all kinds of things. I get into this in my book as well. It includes all of these things that we consider virtues, that we exercise at the same time. Self-control is another one. So until we master these, and it's kind of like juggling. First, I practiced about patience, and it's like throwing the ball up and catching it without dropping it. And it takes time and effort to learn how to be patient with myself and other people, instead of writing them off as dumbasses or laughing at them, having some compassion. Then the next thing, was kindness. So I found it not too hard to be kind. That's like another ball, juggling, right? Then you add mildness, which means not losing my temper, staying calm in my own mind, and giving other people the benefit of the doubt. That's like a third ball. And the more of these you add, juggling, and we're very awkward with it in the beginning, dropping our balls all the time. This is a juggling metaphor, not meant to be your literal balls. But what happens is you do get better at it. It's a skill. And once we know how to do that, then we have to do that towards self first. And once we do it to self, and then we really start to see a huge shift in our life, then we can manifest it towards others. And so I would say, I'm not perfect, but I'm getting pretty good at it all. And I'm pleased when I look at my life, how far I've come. I'm very pleased with the outcome. And my relationships are not with millions of people, but the handful of people I have relationships with, they're good relationships. They're solid. They'll last me my whole life. And my relationship with my grown children is fantastic and full of respect and love. And now I'm living my life as it was meant to. And that's all outside of the construct. It has nothing to do with materialism, popularity, finances, nothing to do with any of that.
Based on my experiences and many others, there seem to be layers beyond our perception, different levels of these astral realms. Through my experiences, I think I passed through many of these based on where I was at and the work I was doing and the self-healing that I managed to start doing for myself. I would be able to access seemingly higher realms with more benevolent and loving intelligences. When my journey first started, the experiences could be very dark, and I would encounter things that could be very terrifying. I understand now all of those things were based on past traumas or things in my consciousness and my own emotional state that needed to be taken care of, being presented as these demons or monsters or negative entities. Once I was able to work through those emotions and heal, I would have experiences with more benevolent entities. And for me, it just went on and on until seemingly the final level I would reach would just be my higher self and myself having a conversation in this white room, which was very interesting. But give us your understanding of the layers beyond our perception.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's interesting, Chris. Once we get to this, have had these certain higher level experiences, we can talk to each other and know exactly what each other means because we've been through it. And I think it's a shared experience that we as humans is actually our birthright, but it takes courage, and we got to go through the shadow work and those lower levels that could be considered shadow work. We need to look at ourselves, watch ourselves like an internal observer. And then we're aware that we're not always nice. We're not always kind. We're not always generous. We're not, we can all be assholes from time to time. And we want to kind of tone down that whole asshole factor. And then that includes the committee of assholes in our head, right? That allows us to go into the higher realms of reality. But we're all filtering these experiences through our own perceptual universe too. So we might describe things differently, but really we're talking about the same thing. And then when we get into studies of the old Gnostic beliefs and the old ancient traditions, we find out, wow, we've all gone through the same thing, but we don't consider ourselves high masters or higher beings, but we've gone through all of that. We found out through our own reality. Part of the problem is that we're not given the concepts or the language. This information has been forbidden. It has been relegated to the arcane, to the mystified, to the hidden. And I get into a lot of that in my book as well. And once we start to experience it, it's universal and it's our birthright. And we come through these things. So, I used to have contact with all kinds of beings. Some I would identify as angelic, some I would identify as learned scholars from days gone by. Like for once, in one instance, I was channeling information from Sun Tzu. And then I was compelled to go and buy The Art of War. And then I realized it was Sun Tzu. So we can have these experiences with ancestors, with people that are basically used to be alive and are now considered to be dead. We can have crypto terrestrial experiences, extraterrestrial experience, but you get to the point where you kind of get past all that, and all you're getting is like pure communication with your higher self. And everything before that is what we needed in order for us to do it. And it's like riding a bicycle with training wheels, and eventually you can take the training wheels off, and then you're not just riding your bicycle, you're actually flying. And so I think that this is a natural progression. It's not really weird or mystical or anything like that. And people have gotten through it, some through psychedelics, some through mental illness, some through trauma and learning to deal with it. There's many, many roads, but what all the roads have in common is they're narrow and they are the less traveled, because we have to go through a certain amount of a discomfort. So I always talk about the awakening as being different than the ascension process. And the ascension process has nothing to do with the rapture. But we have to awaken, and we have to recognize what's been done to us and how we've been curtailed from being fully human, and what's going on in the world. And it's not pleasant stuff. And we got to get through all of that and then find our equilibrium and get our sure footing back, and get onto a healthy course. And then we start to go through what I call the ascension process, which is what you and I have been talking about, where we go through these different layers and these different processes until we're eventually here with ourselves, our true selves. And we're communicating back and forth. And I think beyond our true self is source. And I believe that God or Holy Spirit or prana or chi is source, and it's infinity and eternity, and it's everything. It's not some weird mystical being with a magic wand granting favors, and this ties in beautifully with the simulation theory, the holographic universe. And that's how I see it, being an old lady who's been through quite a bit.
Well, that is almost exactly how I see it as well. I think we're pretty much on the same page with the nature of our reality here. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss about your book before we move on to your orgone generators?
No, but I do want to say that, like I said, in the next couple of weeks, it should be available on Amazon. And if there's anybody out there who has a podcast that would like to have me on so that I can tell your audience about my book, I would love to have the opportunity to promote it and get the word out there. Preston Dennett and Dolly Safran have been so supportive of me, and they both have said they were shocked when they started reading my book, because I've never published before, and they were shocked at the level that it was an easy to understand, easy read, that I take people with me. And it's a very controversial book. I get into all kinds of things that I know I'm not supposed to talk about, but I do anyway. And there's one chapter that I won't talk about. You have to buy the book to read it. And that is love, sex, and reproduction amongst the ETs, because you kind of have to read it, and I don't want to sensationalize by talking about it too much on camera. And that's about it. And I'm just really excited. It's my gift. It's scary, because I'm telling the truth about my life. And I know some people will make fun of me, and some people will call me a heretic, and some people, because it has nothing to do with religion, they might think that I'm demonized or whatever. And it's just like, fuck it. I don't give a shit. Time for the book to come
right
out.
On. I found in my experience, by speaking the truth and living your truth and your passion, that is really what the universe wants from you, and it's going to reward you for that. Yeah. Most people that I surround myself with and have spoken with about this very thing tend to agree that if you take that first step, the universe will take 10 extra steps for you to propel you in your mission, in your soul mission, as long as you're aligned with that.
Yep.
So congratulations again, Karen. Looking very much forward to your book. Now tell us a little bit about how you got started with the orgone.
Okay, so this is kind of an offshoot of what we've already been talking about. I was having a hard time concentrating when I was on the computer. I was very affected to the EM field. and this was even before we had Wi-Fi, or at least until before I had Wi-Fi. And my guides actually, which often happens, I just get a spontaneous knowing, like a download. And I knew I needed to look up orgone generators, and there wasn't much online about it. But I did the research into Wilhelm Reich, and he was like a contemporary of Freud and Einstein and the like. And he discovered orgone energy, which we now understand as being what they call sub-Planck level, Planck, I believe, after Max Planck, which is when you go smaller, I think to the negative 33, smaller than the atomic level. They have discovered that everything is in an amorphous state. It's waves and it's particles, and it's neither, and it's both at the same time. And we draw on that, and that's how we manifest. Okay, so these generators generate orgone. And I'll just give you an example. This one here is full of shungite. And I have amplifying double Merkaba symbol on the front, and I have a spiral on the back. So what this one does is it absorbs all the ambient energy that's around me, and it comes up into the pyramid. And that's why I have pyramids. I have other shapes too, but I have pyramids. And I recommend you keep these around your technology, keep them in the bedroom where you sleep. I have them all over the house. I have my house gridded in them so that they form an exponentially even stronger power. And so what they do is they absorb negative energy, and the pyramid shape itself concentrates the energy about halfway up and then concentrates it again at the tip before it shoots out the top. And there's a lot of information online about how pyramid shapes actually amplify energy. And then the other part about this is the crystals. This is shungite, but black tourmaline, and on many of the black crystals, also anything in the quartz family, will also either absorb and retune or retune the negative energy into positive healing energy, because crystals are technologies. They're in our environment to help us to heal, and amplifies that and sends it out the top. Now, when we're dealing with something like this orgone generator, which is black tourmaline in the bottom and is amethyst at the top, it's also structuring the orgone into the frequency of the crystals. And every crystal has its own a frequency signature, an electronic signature. But the other thing about orgone generators, why they work so well, is this matrix. It's not glass and it's not plastic. It's an organic resin that's actually made out of microscopic particles of crystal itself, and it's liquid, and when it's poured into the mold, and then as the matrix or the resin shrinks, it puts permanent pressure on the crystals. So you guys can Google piezoelectric and learn about how this activates crystals, and they start to produce their own electronic charge, which again draws that ambient energy, mixes it with orgone, restructures it, and sends it out the top. And all of these are handmade. I designed them, and a friend of mine made them for me, and they're in limited supply. When they're gone, because he has since stopped making them, and I don't have anyone who can do the job I need them to do in order to make more. So I'll just show you a couple more. This one here is, oops.
It's transparent.
Really
there it
it.
is. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There it is. There it is. It's a beautiful blue color. It's actually quartz. It's been dyed this beautiful blue because it has a psychological calming effect on us. And you can also see the clear crystal point, which is quartz, and it's AAA. It's a very high quality quartz piece that actually runs through the whole crystal to the whole pyramid to the bottom.
This is one of your beautiful pyramids.
Beautiful. Oh yeah, that's I believe the
Yeah.
shine. That does that have a
It
spiral on the back?
it has a looks like a flower of life and a
Is that the same as
yes, but
this?
it's a little different. It has the little spiral on the top that goes up to the top of the pyramid. Yeah.
Okay, that is
Yeah.
shungite. That's the shungite one. Yeah. And so anyway, clear quartz is extremely powerful. And then the point that's in the middle, like I said, is a high quality quartz. It's wrapped in copper wire. There's metal bits in all of these. And what they do is they create the orgone effect. This one here is peridot.
Wow.
And so they're very
Yeah.
beautiful. And even the symbol has an energetic effect. It kind of creates a bit of a intention. I'll just show you one more of the pyramids. This one here has
Oh, that one's beautiful.
red jasper, orange cornelian, yellow aventurine, green jade, turquoise, lapis lazuli, and amethyst. So this supports all of your chakras. It also has the beautiful crystal point in the top. So that's basically how they work. Now, the other thing I just want to quickly tell everybody is getting grounded. You know how you go outside and you put your feet in the grass? It has a grounding effect, very good for your health. Well, where I live, it's already 25 below zero. We have long, cold winters. I know you have cold winters too, Chris. Well, what you can do is you can take an orgone generator like this. This has shungite in the top, a layer of a layer of copper, and then a layer of clear quartz. It has the spiral on the other side. This is fantastic. You can sleep with this,
Mm.
but you can also add it to a salty bath. And what a lot of people don't realize is that your electrical outlets are all grounded through the plumbing system. So when you run a salty bath with Epsom salts and sea salt and maybe some essential oils, and you throw one of these in the tub, it's actually restructuring the water, super energizing everything, and you're being grounded through the plumbing system around the drain. And it's a fantastic way to ground in the winter time while you're staying nice and cozy. And there's nothing like a hot, salty bath with an orgone generator to really help you have spiritual contact. It's a great way to meditate for people who have a hard time slowing down the monkey brain or have a hard time uh, um, meditating. It's just the perfect environment. And these are a lot of women keep these in their
Mm.
bras. They come in, they have clear quartz, they come with amethyst or citrine, and there's some that are just with the shungite. And so these are amazing little technologies. I have other things. I have all kinds of pendants. I have butterfly shapes that are fantastic for, you could use them as fridge magnets, or you can just take them in the tub with you to restructure the water. I've got items like this. This is black tourmaline and selenite. And this is a wand. It's got a little spiral amplifier on one end. It's got aluminum, so the energy is drawn in through the spiral end and it comes out the aluminum end. And this is very good. You can use it for so many things. You can also use it for doing reflexology and acupressure for massage because it's very comfortable to use on the body. And one more thing I want to show you are the discs. So this particular disc, this one's hematite, and I love it because hematite wicks away pain. And this it actually looks more like amethyst, and I do have them in lapis lazuli and amethyst, but this one here is hematite. It's just coming across just kind of purple. And these are fantastic for sleeping with them, but also for using to massage the body. And you can see there's the copper, there's the spiral on each side, and there's the crystals under pressure in the middle. These absorb from the bottom, and then the energy is coming out in all the directions above. And here's the same one, but this one's in citrine. And citrine is super good for lifting your mood and for healing and for all kinds of things. And so that's basically my orgone generators. And I want to get back to what we were talking about earlier, where a lot of people are experiencing what can be loosely defined as Morgellons. So from chemtrails, from pharmaceuticals, there's all different ways, even junk food and fast food, that we're getting these metallic and technological elements inside our body, which goes back to what you were saying about targeted individuals. So they may be personally targeted, but they also may just be sensitive spiritual beings that have polluted bodies that are absorbing all this electronic noise that's jamming all of our bioenergetic signals. I also get into in my book a little bit about how I found out, which again was through ET, about alien, what I call alien implants. So an alien implant can be physical, it can be metallic, it can be biological, it can be something attached to our DNA, it can be something that's attached to our etheric or auric body. And these have also have a detrimental effect. And today we're almost all polluted with these elements from non-physical and physical, meaning from humans doing experiments on us. And so the best item that I can recommend is a shungite orgone generator. Doesn't have to be shungite. This is another really powerful one. If you go to my website, you'll see I have all different kinds. This is black tourmaline and amethyst. And even the wand that I showed you, and even the disc that I showed you, what this does is it deactivates them. It makes it so that they don't have the same level of influence on us. So this pollution that I'm going to call electromagnetic smog, it comes from so many different sources. This deactivates it, and it doesn't block it. What it does is it deactivates systems within our body that make us susceptible to it, but it also takes the EM field around us and retunes it into positive healing energy. So we can turn any emitter, like the cell phone, of negative energy, and we can it actually will retune the energy into healing, healthful components. And so that has made such a difference. It has boosted my transdimensional experiences. And by the way, I actually don't need cannabis or any psychedelics to have my experiences. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying there's different paths. I talked about that earlier. And it's interesting that hopefully with your new government in the States in the new year, you're going to have psychedelics and cannabis decriminalized on a federal level. And they want to start treating war vets and ex-military people and stuff with it. So obviously, there's going to be a huge shift from that. But I highly recommend orgone generators. Now, right now, if you go to my website, I only have it geared up to use I'm in Canada, the Canada Post system. And they're on strike right now. So I can't guarantee that you'll get them before Christmas. There's a good chance you will, but I can't guarantee it. But the strike is in final negotiations and hopefully will be over soon. But like I said, these are all in limited edition. Some of them I only have maybe 2 or 3 left. Some of them I might have 6 left. But I recommend you go to the website and check them out. And you don't have to buy mine. You can buy them from other people. They're available. You can make them yourself. But I believe mine are special. I know everyone says that, but I believe, because what I do is when my friend makes them for me, first thing I do is I bathe them in salt water. I then smudge them with sacred smoke. I then expose them to sunlight to supercharge them. I then play high frequency music, and the crystals remember the effect, the energetic effect. I then do a linking. I use a wand, and I put all my orgone generators that I used to have, that I have now, and I'll continue to do this in the future. And I put them in a grid, and then I link them. And what I do is I open myself up to energies from the earth and energies from the heavenly realms. I bring that energy into my body. I mix it in my heart chakra. I then send it out my shoulders, down my arms, through my fingers into my wand. My wand further amplifies it. And then I link everything on an energetic level. And then when they go out into the world, they're actually connected. So they're exponentially powerful. And I met a woman in the States who does the same thing. And we exchanged orgone generators, and we include each other's orgone generators into our grids, and we link them. So her whole planetary grid and my whole planetary grid were also connected. And again, exponentially, they're more powerful. So I'm pretty excited about them. And I firmly believe, Chris, I can't guarantee this and I can't prove it, but I firmly believe this is why I have such positive and high level and so many wonderful transdimensional experiences.
Excellent.
So that's
I love them, Karen.
Thank you for letting me talk about them.
Of course, yeah, I really enjoy them. We have them all over our house. The energy is beautiful, and I attribute a lot of the positive feeling that me and my wife and our dogs have during the day to these beautiful orgone generators. So thank you so much. Everyone, visit her website. I'm going to have the links right in the description. Get yourself some orgone generators. Karen, thank you so much. Before we close out, one more time, when are you expecting the book around to be released? And tell everyone once again where they can find you.
I'm hoping to have the book released in about 2 weeks. You can find me at Karen Holton TV on most podcasts. You can find me on the Forbidden Knowledge Network website. You can find me under the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio podcasts. And you can find me on my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. And yeah, you can tell I'm a different kind of health coach.
Excellent. Karen, thank you so much. We'll definitely be speaking again in the future. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.